Hey everyone. So I'm going to take a little bit of time here to explain what you need to do for project part 3. There are some very interesting things that you need to be aware of, some very important things that you need to be aware of right from the get-go. So let's go ahead and take a look here at project part 3, right? So project part 3 is, of course, the rough draft of your research paper. So everything that you worked on in project part 1 and project part 2, you chose your topic, gathered your ideas in project part 1. Project part 2, you came up with your working thesis statement, your main points, your sources, and how you planned on using them. Right, so you've already done a good bit of groundwork for this, but now it's time to actually write the rough draft of the essay. Okay, keep in mind that, even though it is a rough draft, the stronger your draft is, the less revisions you'll have to do in order to submit the final draft. Having said that, though, this is a rough draft, so in some ways, it does not have to be perfect. In other ways, you do have to make sure that some elements are there. The assignment page is broken up sort of into 3 sections. There's one on submission requirements, one on helpful reminders, and one section that kind of explains a little bit about the peer review assignment in week 7. All right, I'm going to briefly go through each of those sections. First thing, though, that I want to remind you of is that, while this is the rough draft, the closer you get to what is required for the final draft, the better off you'll be. And remember, the final draft is required to be 3 to 4 pages double spaced. That's not including the title page or the references page. That's 3 to 4 pages of essay from introductory paragraph to concluding paragraph. 3 to 4 pages double spaced. Okay. Don't forget that you have to use a minimum of 3 sources. Again, if you're following your plan that you set up in project part 2, this shouldn't be a problem. But just keep in mind, you have to use information from at least 3 sources in the essay. Okay. Project part 3 is mandatory. You have to submit it and get my feedback in order to move on to project part 4. So make sure you don't fall too far behind on this. Okay. Submission requirements. This section right here, you want to pay very close attention to, because as you can see here, I will not accept your rough draft unless all of the following criteria are met. I will not accept it. If you try to submit a rough draft and you don't have all of these things accomplished, I will give you a 0 on it and tell you to resubmit it when it's fixed. Once you do that, then I will actually look at what you've written and give you feedback on your ideas and your organization and things like that, right? So here is what the list includes. Your rough draft must have a properly formatted header. It must have a properly formatted title page. It must be double spaced. It must use one of the appropriate font styles and sizes. If you don't remember what any of that information consists of, go back to the lesson on APA format basics in week 4. Your draft must have an introductory paragraph with thesis statement. That doesn't mean that it has to be a stellar intro, but there has to be one. Okay. Your rough draft must have body paragraphs and it must have a concluding paragraph. Go back to weeks 1 and 2 if you're unsure of any of these 3 elements, right? That's when we covered those. And again, it doesn't mean that it has to be the best thing ever here in the rough draft. They just have to be present, okay? Your rough draft must contain in-text citations. We learned about this in weeks 3 and 4. In week 3, we learned how lack of citations equals plagiarism. And in week 4, we learned how to actually create citations, okay? The draft must contain in-text citations. If you give me a rough draft and there are no in-text citations, you will get a 0 and be told to resubmit it once that's fixed. Remember, you have to have at least 3 sources for this paper. So there should be at least 3 sources cited in the body of the essay, in your body paragraphs, your main points. Any citations that are used in your introductory paragraph or your concluding paragraph don't count towards this requirement. It's okay, sometimes it's okay to have source information in your introduction and conclusion. I don't recommend it, but sometimes it works, but those don't count towards this requirement. There must be 3 citations in the body of your essay, the body paragraph. Again, if you did project part 2 the right way, you already have an idea of which source you're going to use for your first main point, which source you're going to use for your second main point, which one you're going to use for your third main point. So this should work out anyway, right? There should be a citation every time source information is used in the body paragraphs. Remember, every time you use information from a source in any way, shape, or form, you must provide a citation. And again, if you're unclear about how to create citations or where to place them or any of that, first go back to weeks 3 and 4. And if you're still not sure, reach out to me, because this is a very important element. Your rough draft must contain a references page. So you must show an attempt at correct formatting for the reference page as a whole, okay? There must be at least 3 sources listed, because you have to use at least 3, right? It must show an attempt at correct formatting for each source's reference entry. And it cannot just be a list of URLs, of website addresses. You have to at least attempt to create the proper reference entry for every single one of your sources. And again, we covered that in week 4, both the reference entries and the references page, right? Again, if you are missing any of these, if any of these are missing, if you haven't met these requirements, even just one of them, you'll get a 0 until you fix it, and then resubmit it, and then I will review your rough draft, okay? Additional helpful reminders, this list right here you can go through. It's really just reminding you of what an essay is supposed to contain, an introductory paragraph with a thesis statement, main points that are developed in body paragraphs, that each paragraph should have a transitional topic sentence. Each one should be developed fully, mostly with your own ideas, but also with a little bit of source information to support those ideas. Every paragraph should have a concluding sentence. The essay should have a concluding paragraph, right? So again, this list of helpful reminders, if you forget your transitional topic sentences in your body paragraphs, I will still accept the rough draft from you. But, I will point out that you're missing the transitional topic sentences. And if you don't fix that, points will get taken off on the final draft. So this list right here under, additional helpful reminders, these aren't things that are going to cause you to get a 0 on the rough draft and have to redo it, right? They're just there to remind you of what your final draft is expected to have. So the more you get of that now in the rough draft, the better off you'll be when it's time to revise and submit the final draft. Right here, we kind of get into some more reminders more about the research aspect. You got to have at least 3 sources. Any information that's obtained from a source has to be cited with an APA parenthetical citation. Failure to do so constitutes plagiarism, could result in a failing grade. Any source cited in the body of the essay must appear on your references page. Any source listed on your references page must be used or cited at least once within the body of the essay. Again, this is all the stuff we covered in weeks 3 and 4. Your writing should show a level of voice, tone, and formality appropriate for a college level course. And you should aim for proper spelling, grammar, and sentence mechanics. Those are the lessons that are covered in week 6 here, which you might skip this week, and that's okay. But you'll definitely have to come back to them between now and week 8, because not only is that required to access Project Part 4, but you'll be graded. Part of your grade on Project Part 4 will be, as few grammar and spelling mistakes as possible, right? This section that's highlighted here, super important. Whoops, I what I just did. Moving the margin. I run your rough draft through a plagiarism checker. I run all assignments through a plagiarism checker, honestly, but it becomes a little more, imperative to, discuss it here with a research paper. I run every rough draft through a plagiarism checker. I run every final draft through a plagiarism checker. So what happens if that program shows that there's plagiarized material in your essay? Most situations where plagiarism has occurred falls into one of these three categories. So if your whole essay or a significant amount of your essay has been lifted from one or more sources, you'll get a 0 on project part 3, and you'll be asked to submit a new version that is at least 80% your own ideas and words, and only 20% or less from source material that has been properly cited. Now, the reason this is listed down here and not up here with the submission requirements, even though I kind of say you got to have the citations, you should be using the citations, you have to do your best to make sure you've accomplished that. But if something goes wrong, you could turn in something to me, and upon first glance to me, it looks like you have, accomplished all of these requirements up here. So then I'll accept the draft and I'll go start reviewing it. I run it through the plagiarism checker, and oops, all of a sudden it's coming back that 65% of your essay has been plagiarized. Then we have a problem. You'll get the 0 and you'll be asked to redo it. If your draft contains small instances of plagiarism, but like multiple instances, so like every paragraph has, one section that's been plagiarized from a source, you'll get a 0 and be asked to fix it and resubmit it. If there's like only 1 or 2 really small instances of plagiarism in the draft, for example, like a sentence or 2 from one of your body paragraphs, I will go ahead and accept your draft and review it, and I will simply point out that plagiarized little small section and tell you that if it's not fixed by the time you submit the final draft, it could result in a failing grade. But if it's just that one small little spot, I'm not, because sometimes that happens unintentionally, right? So I will give students the benefit of the doubt if it's just one small little thing. But if you've got multiple instances of plagiarism, or a huge portion of the essay has been lifted from one or more sources, that you get a 0 and then you get told to redo it. Okay. This section right here, preparing for the peer review assignment in week 7. Don't worry about the, what that peer review is going to consist of just yet. That will get explained next week when you are given the assignment. But basically what you need to know now is that in week 7, you will be required to send your draft to another student so that they can complete a peer review on your draft. There will be a sheet that they fill out, provided by me, questions to be answered. They will read your draft, answer the questions on the form, submit the form in the peer review assignment, and then they will get credit for completing the peer review assignment. You have sent your draft to that person. In the meantime, another one of your classmates has sent their draft to you, and now you read their draft, fill out the form and answer the questions, submit that form, and you get credit for the peer review assignment. So the credit for doing the peer review comes from reading someone else's rough draft and answering the questions that I give you. Who do you send your draft to? Who's going to send you theirs? Underneath this section on project part 3 is a list of everyone in the class. Find your name on the list and send your rough draft to the person listed immediately below you. If you are the last student on the list, you will send your rough draft to the person who is listed number 1 at the top, right? So person number 1 sends theirs to person number 2. Person number 2 sends theirs to person number 3, so on and so forth. You get to the bottom, the person at the bottom of the list sends theirs to the person at the top of the list. find your name, send your draft to the student listed below you. Their email will be provided for you. And you will do that when, at the same time, you submit Project Part 3 to me. So you'll upload Project Part 3 into the Project Part 3 assignment spot, find the person you're supposed to send it to, and email it to them as well. That way, when week 7 starts and everybody, because everybody's going to do a peer review assignment at different times during the week, but if everybody has already sent their draft to their assigned person, then everybody has it there and it's ready for them whenever they are able to actually then complete the peer review itself. Okay, but again, don't worry too much about how to do the peer review yet. That'll get explained next week. All you need to know right now is find your name on the list here in Project Part 3 at the bottom, send your rough draft to the person listed below you, and submit it to me in the Project Part 3 assignment spot. Okay, this is a lot of information to take in. What you need to be most concerned about is this section here highlighted in yellow in the instructions, and this section right here under submission requirements. Those are the items that will have the most immediate effect on you as you try to work on this draft and submit it. This section here in the middle is just there to help you do as well as you can on the rough draft so that you can get as much feedback from me and possibly not have to do as much revising later. Okay. If you got questions, run into any problems, please reach out. Just know that all of those submission requirements we have covered in the lessons in weeks 1 through 5. So go back to them to make sure that you understand what is required of you before I will accept your draft. And if you are unsure of something, reach out to me. Okay. Otherwise, just do your best. Good luck.